Hi, I'm Ashwin Vasavada, and I'm the project scientist for the Curiosity rover at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. Yeah, the Curiosity rover launched in 2011, got to Mars in 2012, and for the past decade, we've been climbing the mountain, like you can see behind me, and looking for evidence of how much a role water played in forming this mountain. And we're about a quarter mile high up on the mountain in terms of elevation. And we've just come across an area where we find the strongest evidence yet that lakes once existed where the mountain is today. And these lakes would have been there a few billion years ago. It really is fairly complicated and slower than a video game for sure. Every day we send up a full day's worth of commands to the rover, and it automatically walks through those commands, whether it's to drive or take out its arm or take a bunch of pictures. And at the end of its day on Mars, it sends that data back to Earth, and then we get it overnight and we start all over again the next day. So we talk to the rover basically once per day. We don't actually have a joystick. We can't see what's happening in real time, but we do get to interact with it about once every day. What we found over the past decade is that a lot of the layers on this mountain, Mount Sharp, were formed when mud formed at the bottom of ancient lakes, and those layers of mud became the mountain. But we were really seeing that evidence in the form of uh, rocks that looked like they were hardened mud or minerals in the rocks like clay that form in lakes. But this time we kind of turned a corner and saw this amazing expanse of ripples that were now, of course, hardened into rock. But they're the kind of ripples that you might see like if you're at the beach and the sand and the water's coming back and forth and the sand is forming these little wavy ripples beneath your feet. And those were now frozen in time from 3 billion years ago for us to see today. And this tells us that there was a lake and there was water and there was wind and the waves were kind of going back and forth, creating these ripples. We really are learning as we go along. We had ideas, we call them hypotheses, that we formed before landing of what we thought might be going on with Mount Sharp, that it did form when there were lakes present, but we couldn't prove any of that until we were actually on the ground driving around with our rover. And of course, we were wrong in some cases and we were right in others. And that's the beauty of exploration and figuring things out. And we had seen a lot of evidence for water forming layers lower down, and we actually thought, we hypothesized we were getting to an area where the lakes were drying out. And what we see above that area was just kind of dry sand dunes that had turned into rock. But this area that we just reached with this great evidence of water and waves wasn't an area we thought was going to be a dry ancient climate. But it turns out it was a really wet period of Mars history 3 billion years ago. We are indeed trying to look for a softer place to drill. In fact, just today, we're sending up commands to the rover to drive another 20 feet or so from the area that had the really hard rocks, where we think there's a different geological unit that might be better to drill. So we'll see how that goes. But we have a really capable rover with this jackhammer drill, but still, there are some rocks that are just too hard for even our drill to get through. Yeah, I think finding life on Mars or anywhere else in the solar system or the universe would be probably one of the top or the top scientific discovery of all time. We just don't know whether there's any other life out there. What we found out about Mars with Curiosity is that the conditions were there for life to take advantage of. There was water, there were nutrients, sunlight, anything you would need for life was there, but we have not yet found any evidence of that life. So it remains a mystery. But if we were to find it, or if when samples come back from Mars one day, if we were to find it then, it would be a truly profound discovery. So I'm a scientist, which is relatively rare at JPL. It's mostly a place where there's engineers, the people who are so creative in building these amazing robots and spacecraft in order to do these incredible things like drill rocks on Mars. But as scientists, we are kind of the customers for all that. We're the ones asking the questions that require this incredible technology to answer. And so it's just a thrill for me to be able to ask these wild questions. Was there a lake in this mountain on Mars? And to work with some of the most talented engineers in the world to come up with ways and machines and incredible engineering achievements to be able to answer those questions. I think what inspired me is that I just love the idea of answering questions, especially by exploring. I was a kid and I saw these pictures when we first landed on Mars, and it just blew my mind that there was a whole other planet besides Earth that you could like walk out on, and there was rocks and there was hills and sand and even more surprises like we're finding now. And I just wanted to be in a place where I could make those discoveries and wake up and see things that no one had ever seen before. And so that's what I get to do every day now through the eyes of this robot. But it's a real thrill.